Good evening, friends. Thank you for spending a few moments with me tonight. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life, coming to you to encourage you tonight. Thank you for joining me. Well, let's start with a prayer from my book, Pro-Life Reflections for Every Day. And the Gospel of Life, the encyclical by St. John Paul II, says this: life is always a good. In what way is life a good? Life, which is handed on to us by God, stands out amidst the world as a revelation of God, a sign of His presence, a trace of His glory. Reflection. Abortion advocates say that the embryo or fetus is just a collection of cells. But that is no argument at all. The same can be said of you and me. If someone does not see the dignity of the human person, their view of people is just reduced to cells. Let us pray. Fill us with wonder, O Lord, at your glory shining through every human life. Amen. Well, this book can be yours. Go to prolifereflectionsforeveryday.com to order it. I'll be happy to personalize it for you. I want to give you some encouragement tonight. The elections of 2020 are far from over. The presidential race, it's amazing how some people, even high-placed people in government and in the church, don't seem to be able to get it through their heads that we have a method in the United States of deciding presidential elections, and that method has not yet run its course. We also have rights as Americans to make sure our votes have been properly counted and that the process has not been led astray or infected by any kinds of error or fraud. We have a right to say, hold it, stop the presses, let's make sure that everything's being done. You know why we have a right to do this? Because we're a people of law and order. So is it any surprise that the party that wants to try to claim that this presidential race has been decided is exactly the party that throws law and order out the window in every other context, in arena of life, who throws due process out the window? Look what they did with the president in the fake impeachment hoax. They threw due process right the heck out the window. Look what they did to Judge Brett Kavanaugh in his confirmation process to become Justice Kavanaugh. Threw due process right the heck out the window. So it's no surprise that they're just going to ignore the fact that there's a multi-step process to certifying a presidential election. They don't care. And neither do their allies in the mainstream media. They couldn't care less. Just throw it out the window. Nothing to see here, folks. Don't worry. And then when we as citizens speak up and say, hey, wait a second, maybe we as citizens who love law and order, we as Americans who love due process and understand that this is a process, not a coronation by the media, but rather a process engaged in by the people and supervised by the people, not by media pundits who from their high and lofty throne issue dogmas and decrees saying who won the election. The President of the United States is not appointed from on high from the throne of the Associated Press. That's not how this works. And the American people are getting a lesson in that if they didn't know it already. But you know what? There's a lot of people that don't know. I was thinking today, you see these man on the street interviews and, people can't name the three branches of government, right? They can't tell you who their congressman is. They don't even know the name of the vice president of the United States. There's an astonishing and alarming amount of ignorance in our country about the most fundamental aspects of civic life, right? So is it any surprise that people don't know the fundamentals of how a presidential race is decided? Of course it's no surprise. They don't even know the three branches of government. So listen, I want to encourage you. I got some updates here today from the campaign and from some other sources. Let me just read some of this because, we've got to get very specific in our minds, the reasons why we should have confidence. One of the key reasons, and of course we know the spiritual reasons, this is truly in God's hands, and He doesn't want our nation going off a cliff. He doesn't want us to become a socialist nation or get absorbed into globalism. We are the United States of America. Our founding fathers believed in God and in Jesus Christ, and we're going to keep this nation the way that it was founded. That's what's at stake here. This is not just about, is it Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Is it the Republicans or the Democrats? This is about what version of America do we want? And we should be encouraged now, and we should be strengthened for the very same reasons that we were working so hard during the election. When we, during an election, say, as we have said in this one, that this is the most consequential election of our lifetimes, that everything is on the line, that it's the very principles of Western civilization that are at stake, it's America as we know it. Think about this for a moment. If that's what we're saying during the election, that these fundamental principles are at stake and that it is a fight as worthy as when our founders fought in the American Revolution, well, then you don't engage in a battle with that mindset and then say, well, the voters have decided, and so, we have to move on and unite around the one that we elected and make peace and, the election is over. Those two things don't fit. If we were all working on the same principles, if the very nature of America were not at stake, if the principles of Western civilization were agreed upon by both parties, but you just had disagreements about the practical ways to preserve those principles, well, then you could say at the end of an election, all right, so you win some, you lose some, that's okay. And then you sort of pretend that you weren't fighting so hard before. But this is different. This is different. And that's why the president is fighting so hard. And that's another reason why we need to be so confident here. Do you see him signaling in any way that, well, maybe he's not so sure about what we should be doing here? No, he's signaling just the opposite. He is absolutely confident. I won this election. Biden and his people are trying to steal it. The mainstream media is trying to deceive us. And his legal team is more confident every day. And I want you to understand this. This is psychological warfare as much as it is legal warfare and political warfare. There's warfare at many different levels. Spiritual warfare, we all understand. And the psychological warfare here is, again, that the other side wants to make you think, well, there's no way that, President Trump could really turn this around. Well, listen, the signals that he's sending, and I hope you're following him on Twitter at @RealDonaldTrump, and I hope you're also following Team Trump. I've mentioned this all through the election season. The notes of confidence that are coming from those sources and from his legal team, more confidence every day. Why? Because they're gathering the evidence. Do you know now that hundreds of thousands, think about this for a moment, hundreds of thousands of citizens and voters have raised their hands and said, wait a second, something went wrong here in this process. And it makes sense. As time goes on, media pundits, and people we even respect in media, in government, in the church, are saying, okay, this is decided already for Biden. Oh no. They want you to think that the more days that go by, the more sure they are that it's Biden's election. Well, wait a second. The opposite is happening. The more days that go by, the more questions are raised, the more concerns are uncovered and brought to light, and hundreds of thousands of voters have spoken that this didn't go the right way. And we're not talking about that they didn't agree with the results. We're talking about that there was error and fraud. And now, as those objections are brought forward, remember, with each passing day, that information is working its way ever so slowly and gradually through the legal processes that have been initiated in various states. You can't just dismiss in your mind that, oh, this is just because, they don't want to accept the results of the election. You can't just presume that those are the motives of people. There are also very, very honest motives of saying, wait a second, there's evidence here that there's something wrong. And that's some of what I want to read to you tonight. But I got to tell you, the legal team of the president is extremely confident about this. Let me read you something here. Okay, so the Washington Post, and this is part of the psychological warfare, mischaracterized the latest development in the Pennsylvania controversy about the votes in that state by saying that the Trump campaign had dropped the claim of nearly 700,000 ballots being processed illegally because they were processed in secret rather than with transparency. Remember, in the handling of the ballots, as I've explained to you a number of times before, there are three issues: the validity of the ballot, the chain of custody, that is, whose hands does it pass through, and then transparency in the counting of the ballots. You got to be able to see, everybody's got to be able to see when these ballots are counted and handled, that they're being handled the right way, and that they're not looking at, oh, this person voted for Trump, let's throw this one away. It's got to be done transparently so that there's no chance of people doing anything like that. Okay. The campaign did not drop its claims in this regard. The campaign did no such thing. But rather, on Friday, there was an unrelated case ruled on by the Third Circuit Court of Appeals that used equal protection arguments related to the 14th Amendment, that then the campaign modified its arguments to fit more precisely the thinking of the court. This is a standard practice in these lawsuits where you can submit an amended argument. What the campaign is claiming is that 682,479 ballots were improperly processed and counted. Now, when you hear that, oh, Biden has a 79,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania, again, people will report to you what they want you to hear to make you feel like they want you to feel. 79,000 sounds like a big margin. Well, it's nothing in comparison to 682,479. If all these ballots were illegally and secretly handled rather than transparently and legally, that's a big problem for Biden, and it's a big problem for all of us. Paragraph 4 of the amended filing, let me read it verbatim. Allegheny and Philadelphia counties alone received and processed 682,479 mail-in and absentee ballots without review by the political parties and candidates. These are unprecedented numbers in Pennsylvania's elections history. Rather than engaging in an open and transparent process to give credibility to Pennsylvania's brand new voting system, the processes were hidden during the receipt, review, opening, and tabulation of those 682,479 votes. Friends, this is not just about voting and counting. It's about voting and counting legally. Okay. The lawsuit also claims, and this is another part of the argument, that because some voters who mailed in ballots in Philadelphia, now follow this argument, many of you have heard it before, it's worth reviewing. Again, it should give us confidence here. Some voters who mailed in ballots in Philadelphia were alerted by election workers, that their ballots may have contained mistakes or defects that would cause them to be rejected. And you might say, oh, well, isn't that nice? That's nice of the election workers to do that. These voters were given the opportunity to cast provisional ballots in the event that their mailed-in ballots were thrown out. So far, so good, but then listen to this. Voters in other counties of Pennsylvania were not afforded that same opportunity. In addition, since the Philadelphia voters were forewarned that their ballots could be defective, it is an indication that poll workers were pre-canvassing those ballots prior to Election Day, which would be a clear violation of Pennsylvania law. So you're going to help some voters correct deficiencies in their ballots that might otherwise prevent those ballots from being counted, but you're not going to give the same consideration and service to other voters, and you're going to look at the ballots to see what the mistakes were before Election Day and maybe see who they voted for and ask some people, hey, you better make sure you correct this. You don't want it to be eliminated, but not give that same benefit to other people. That is against the equal protection under the law, which is a fundamental constitutional principle. That's why these ballots could be thrown out. Let me read a little bit more of what the campaign was saying today. The president is not conceding anything. Let's repeat, the president is not conceding anything. In fact, what the president is speaking to is the mindset of the media. The fact of the matter is, states have not yet certified who has actually won their respective contests. All due respect to those in the media, in the government, and in the church. All due respect, Joe Biden is not the president-elect. Of course, unless you want to just disrespect the whole process, disregard the whole process, of which many of these people are ignorant anyway. We still have a number of very specific legal challenges that are going. We do believe that the state of Pennsylvania was systemically compromised, and that election is going to go to the courts. They review that. We do believe that there were instances of systemic fraud in the state of Michigan, especially as we go through Wayne County and get into the particulars there. And now here's another concrete example of ballots being run through multiple times. Same ballots being run through the machine multiple times. So one person's vote gets counted as 20 votes. Officials putting up cardboard, not allowing our observers to watch ballots be counted. What's with that? I keep thinking about that. It's like, what in the world would be your motive for doing that if you have nothing to hide? I mean, why do you put cardboard up to keep people from looking at a ballot counting process that's supposed to be transparent? Because after all, it's supposed to be done fairly. Why do you do something like that unless you have something to hide? Right? I mean, it's so elementary. A grade school child can figure this out. So officials putting up cardboard, not allowing our observers to watch ballots be counted. A lot of very specific issues. We haven't even gotten into the ballot harvesting in Georgia. We need to make sure we go through this because it is not just about this election in Georgia, it's also about the Senate runoff elections coming up. And that's a big topic, friends, that we're going to be talking about a lot in these coming weeks. January 5th, mark it on your calendar. You know people in Georgia, get on them right now, tonight, tomorrow. Georgia's going to determine the course of the nation here, with the Senate being evenly divided, 2 Senate seats up in Georgia. And the reason they have to have the runoff election, you know that by Georgia law, if a candidate on election day in November doesn't get 50% of the vote, they face then a runoff in January. It just happens to be the state law. Remember, the Constitution gives to the states the rights to make the specific laws regarding how elections are conducted, and that happens to be the law in Georgia. Let me read a little bit more detail about ongoing lawsuits here. This election is far from over. The campaign says, we are pursuing the rule of law. We have excellent cases in Michigan and Pennsylvania. Now in Michigan, they have 243 pages of affidavits. Now these are sworn affidavits under penalty of law, penalty of perjury, saying what? That they saw stacked the ballots being counted and rented the Skinners multiple times. Giant batches of ballots, 60% all contained the same signature in Pennsylvania. Excuse me. The election's not over. We have a very good case in Michigan and Pennsylvania. Now, in regard to the software, the machines and the possible manipulation of the software systems. Wow. I mean, a lot of evidence about this. President Trump has gotten more evidence of the rigging that went on. He is really outraged. I am too. This is Rudy Giuliani. It's way beyond what people think, including a very, very dangerous foreign company that did the votes in 27 states, a company that's not American, a company that's foreign, close ties to Venezuela and therefore China. It's a national security problem that Dominion Company, a radical left company, has created. One of the people there is a big Antifa supporter, has written horrible things about the president for the last 4 years, and so forth. And all this. Let me read a little bit more about this Dominion problem because there's some specifics here. Now, Texas, this system, Dominion as it's called, electronic system to count the votes, was used in 27 states. Texas was not one of those states. They tested it and they rejected it. They tested and rejected it 3 times. Multiple Democrats, including Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, have warned about problems with these voting systems as recently as last year. So there is bipartisan concern about this. Now, my own congressman here in Florida, Bill Posey, wrote a letter signed by some other members of Congress as well to the Attorney General, Bill Barr, and said this. For example, a clerk in Antrim County, Michigan, initially reported that the Democratic presidential nominee was beating President Trump by approximately 3,000 votes. Okay. However, after manually entering the results, okay, so 3,000 votes, the software program says Biden's ahead. However, after manually entering the results from printed tabulated tapes, so look at the same information but count it manually, don't rely on the software, the results flipped and had President Trump ahead by about 2,500. The county uses Dominion voting systems equipment. This same equipment is used by most of the other Michigan counties, including Wayne County. It's also used by many counties located in 28 states, including the battlegrounds of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Listen, I don't know what's going on with these machines, but if there's evidence, see, here in the United States of America, we believe in the rule of law, and if there's evidence, you don't just dismiss it. See, this is what the other side likes to do. Oh, just dismiss it. Oh, you people are just, you're just imagining things, sore losers, Oh, yeah, well, you know what? We're Americans. And we're concerned about the fairness and accuracy of every election and every vote, every person. So you don't have to draw any conclusions in advance. You don't have to have any preconceived notions at all. You just have to be scientifically minded. Look at the evidence. If there's evidence, follow it up. As I mentioned earlier, every day that passes, the legal team has more confidence because more and more of these stories are coming forward. In fact, just before I came on this program with you here just now, I was talking to a friend who 15 years ago moved out of one of these key states. Now get this, I just was talking with this person on the phone. 15 years ago, moved out from one of the key states to another state where they live now. And found out in this election that they are still registered in the state where they lived 15 years ago. This person is registered independent. The state where they lived has them registered as a Democrat. And they were told, when they contacted the Board of Elections just to check in on this, that, oh yes, your ballot was mailed to you, and we received it back with your vote. This person didn't vote in that state in this election, haven't even lived there in 15 years. We got your ballot back with your vote, and you're a registered Democrat. This is the kind of stuff, again, that hundreds of thousands of citizens are saying is going on now. Okay. A few other points, friends, a few other points. And this is from my friend Gary Bauer, who sends out a great daily email. Check out American Values, Gary Bauer. He himself ran for president. He knows what this stuff is all about. He said, there's a lot of things about this election that don't make sense. Let me read a few of them. Donald Trump received millions of additional votes compared to 2016. He did. As a result, Republicans exceeded expectations in House races. All right, they didn't lose; they gained seats in the House. That was not expected. The Republican ticket outperformed. Now, if a person is voting for these Republican members of the House, very likely they're going to vote for President Trump, right? So Republicans exceeded expectations in the House races and at the state level. They gained trifectas. In other words, where at the state level they control both chambers of the legislature as well as the governor's office. They gained, not lost. Democrats tried to make them lose some of their trifectas, but they gained them instead. They were not wiped out in the Senate contest, despite hundreds of billions of dollars that the Democrats spent to take out some key senators like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and various other senators. Strong Republican firewall against that. Strong Republican defense of these senators and re-electing these senators, left and right. You don't think these are going to be Trump voters too? So the Republicans come out, and the president himself has millions and millions more voters than last time. And so they make progress in the House and in the Senate and at the state level. And in spite of this surprising success at every level, we're supposed to believe that President Trump really lost? 19 bellwether counties, now listen to this fact, have historically voted for the winner of every presidential election for the last 40 years in these 19 bellwether counties. Their success at accurately reflecting the rest of the country is why they are called bellwethers. This year, President Trump carried 18 of the 19 bellwether counties. 18 of the 19. And yet he supposedly lost the election? How do you explain this? Third point, an unprecedented number of Americans, and we were talking to you about this in the days prior to Election Day, as you'll recall, an unprecedented number of Americans say that they were better off under President Trump than they were 4 years ago under Obama-Biden. And yet we're supposed to believe that they voted against President Trump? 56%, a number never reached before in a re-election campaign, said 56%, we're better off today than we were under the last administration. How are we supposed to make sense out of that? And finally, according to exit polling, the economy was the most important issue to voters. Okay, no surprise there. And President Trump has a positive approval rating on the economy. So we're supposed to believe that he is the first president to lose re-election while carrying a positive approval rate on the economy, the number one issue in the minds of the voters? All we're saying here, friends, and not to mention going to bed on election night with the president way, way ahead in all these key states, only to find out the next morning that all kinds of additional ballots appeared and brought him behind Biden. All we're saying here is any rational thinking, fair-minded person cannot ignore these questions. Investigate them and come up with a reasonable explanation. We're all ears. But just dismiss the questions? Doesn't work that way. And that's what the president and his team are saying. We're not going to let people just dismiss these questions. I hope you don't dismiss them either, friends. Let's work hard. Let's pray hard. Let's keep focused. Keep confident. Now remember, we've got to have a lot of patience because this process is a slow, careful process. A lot of the states are still counting ballots. It is none of the states have certified their results yet. And remember, the legal challenges that have been introduced, they have to follow specific timetables. And the process is moving. It is moving forward. So it's likely to be, a few weeks of kind of in the same kind of merry-go-round. There'll be the psychological warfare, and people will say, oh, well, everybody's assuming that, Biden is one and everything. Oh, he's making a transition. There's all these news reports about the transition. There's going to be no transition if you didn't actually win. Stay confident, stay focused, and you know what? Also stay focused on this, and I've made this point before, but it's worth repeating. MAGA is a movement. It's not just a political slogan. It's not just a campaign. It's not just about President Trump. It's about us. It's about our love for America. It's about our commitment to making America great, and we're going to do that no matter what this ends up turning out here in this election. MAGA is a movement. And it's going to continue. And the President Trump has laid a groundwork and has given us a tremendous amount of progress. We're going to build on it. And he's going to keep building on it too, whether he's president or not. So thanks, friends. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for sticking with the president. And thanks for sticking with Georgia. We've got to win those 2 Senate races in Georgia. Kelly Loeffler and Senator David Perdue, 2 great senators. We need to reelect them, so that the Republicans will have a 52-48 majority in the Senate, so that even if Biden were in the White House, that Senate provides the firewall, the blockade against them passing all sorts of radical laws on abortion and immigration and all sorts of other things, repacking the courts, reshaping the courts, doing away with the legislative filibuster in the Senate, and all the crazy things that they want to do just to grab power, make D.C. and Puerto Rico into states so that they can get 4 more Democrat senators, and on it goes. Contact everyone you know in Georgia. We'll be talking more about that. Okay, let me give you a blessing. We'll say good night and get a good night's sleep. May the Lord bless you, strengthen you, answer all your prayers, protect you, make you strong advocates for life and for America. May He bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We appreciate your involvement with us here at Priests for Life. Remember, prolifevote.com is our main election website. Go there. See what you've got going on there. Volunteer for the campaigns there in Georgia. Even if you're not from Georgia, you can make phone calls on behalf of those 2 senators. And that's what we want to invite you to do. You'll see on our website some of the further details. Thanks, friends. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. Have a good night.
I think we have Richard Lee, we have Jim Garlow, and we have Father Frank Pavone, someplace there in the audience, so I appreciate you.
Follow him, Father Frank Pavone, Fr. Frank Pavone, on Twitter. He is the National Director of Priests for Life. Please go to priestsforlife.org.